Okay, now I have my frames built, my outer frames built. I'm just going to use these two views for right now. I have the outer frames built. I have my horizontal pieces glued in place. Notice there's no pinning to do on the inside. Once I have my frames and my horizontals in place, the last sticks we're going to do are the diagonals. The diagonals take longer to do because there are multiple cuts and markings that we have to make. What I want to do right now is narrow in or zero in on just one area, in this area here. As you notice with the designs, we're going to end up having one full stick going one direction, two separate sticks going the other direction. So whichever stick you decide to have as your full stick, make sure it's a duplicate on the opposite view as well. So if we're going to have these two as full pieces, these two will be full pieces as well. So let's narrow in on this one spot right here, and we'll talk about how to properly mark a diagonal line. So first of all, we need to know what parallel lines are. If you're not sure what a parallel line is, then we need to take a look at graph paper grid lines, because the graph paper grid lines are parallel lines. They're side by side and never intersect. So the first thing we need to take a look at is take a look at your lines that you already have on the paper. If we take a look at this diagonal line right here, we'll notice that this diagonal line, if I travel up here with my pin, we have to take a look at, will it connect to this stick better or this stick better? In this case, it looks as though this line is going to connect to the edge of this stick better, because the majority of the line will be connected right here on this edge. If I follow this down to the opposite end with my pin, the line actually touches this stick right here. So you want to mark these two ends first before you do any cutting. Next thing we're going to do is take a piece of your balsa wood, lay it over the top of your line that you have already drawn, and when it's touching the edge of the stick here, mark a parallel line. Again, go back to the side by side example. The line is parallel to the first stick that you've cut, or marked, We take your stick, take your scissors, and once again make sure the top blade of the scissors lines up with the line that you marked, and then make a cut straight through. With that on there, now we can go back and line it up again, and notice now that that parallel line that I've drawn allows this entire edge of this stick to be connected to that previous stick, the horizontal stick. So now we know that this is a very strong joint because the entire thickness of the wood is connected. If we follow down to this end, here was the edge we marked originally. We're going to mark a parallel line on this end right here. And now we know this line is parallel to the stick it's going to connect to. And again, take the blade of your scissors, line the top blade up with the mark that you made with your marker or pin, and make a straight cut. Now, if we keep track of where we made our two cuts, so we can see how tight both of those joints are now going to be, making this area, this crossbeam, a lot stronger. So all we have left to do after we made those cuts is to take and dip both ends in the glue, and at this point keep track of which end goes in which corner of your joint so that we don't get them backwards or mixed around. There's our full piece. Now we have two individual pieces. We're going to follow the same rule. So in this case, we look at the line, it comes down, we're going to just make a mark here. That's a pretty easy cut to make. And then if we follow this across to the top, notice it goes right in both corners. So in this case, I'm going to take and mark this edge right here because it looks as though this line is actually going to connect in that corner a lot better. So we'll take the stick, and from our previous cut, I already had an angle cut. Notice sometimes you get lucky and see that it's actually the same angle that you cut previously. So in this case, I don't need to cut this corner, do I? But down here, I'm just going to follow this edge, move my finger out of the way, follow this edge, make a parallel line, just like that, so it's parallel to the edge that you're trying to connect to. And once again, take your scissors, line up the blade, make that cut, set it back in place, and we're on our way to making diagonals. So we're going to dip both ends in the glue again, set it in place, again no pinning necessary, and continue on with your corners. So my advice to you is to continue by marking your edges first with a pin so you know how to make a parallel line to the next stick that goes in place.